welcome to your industry study video tutorial. Today we're going to cover the last three sub-dot points of structural considerations in terms of an industry. The first one is production and efficiency, then we're going to have a quick look at restructuring, and then we're going to look at quality control. So production and efficiency. First off, let's just define what we mean by that. So the production is the actual act of making something or an article or whatever it is being produced by something in the industry. So the production is the actual, if you want to go really simple, the actual making or the producing. And it can be used to measure efficiency. So the relationship is like how you produce. It can be used to measure how efficient you are. Efficiency is the effectiveness of the operation of a business. And it's pretty easy algorithm, but you go, okay, this is what I can actually produce. So, whatever article it is I'm producing, this is what I actually produce versus this is what it actually costs me to produce. So it's the comparison of that ratio of what I actually make versus how much it costs me to actually do so determines how efficient I am as a business. In terms of production, there are a variety of different departments that must be coordinated in order to just produce, a product. A lot of the time, if we're thinking about the actual production, we think a lot of the, the frontline or skilled workers, skilled and unskilled labor, workers. However, there is also a variety of other departments or people involved in that process. These include, but aren't limited to, R&D, which is research and development, who basically carry out market research, latest developments and testing and evaluating, different new materials or existing materials. They are the research and development team. So before a business actually goes into the making, I suppose, of a particular item, there's a lot of research and development that goes on. R&D works in conjunction with designers who, come up with the initial designs or ideas to improve products. So R&D and design all happens before your, engineers, supervisors, skilled and unskilled labor actually assemble and produce the product. So when you're talking about production, don't forget that there is actually a lot of stages outside the actual hands-on doing of producing a product for a business. So if we've said efficiency or the efficiency of a business is the comparison of what they actually produce versus how much it costs for them to produce that, it's a pretty easy ratio to understand. So how can you improve efficiency? So how can you improve the ratio or the comparison of what you actually produce versus how much it costs you produce? Well, there's a variety of different ways. So while it might take some initial upfront costs, replacing human labor with machines and automation means that there's not an ongoing salary for that person that you have to, that you're required to pay. You don't have overheads such as union fees or paying superannuation, or if I replace human labor with a machine or automation, I can reduce the amount it costs me to produce in the long run. That also includes computerizing some aspects of the business to also not have to pay a salary, such as administration. However, I can reduce the ratio, or I can decrease the ratio or the difference of what it costs me to produce what I'm producing by bulk buying materials or locating myself near where raw materials are sourced. That means I can save a whole lot of money in terms of transportation, and usually when I involve transportation of raw materials, there's a lot of logistical overheads when transporting raw materials. But if I also bulk buy them, what that means as well is that I can usually get discounts on costs. In terms of being able to reduce the cost of producing items, organizing my manufacturing into an assembly line means I'm more organized usually and have less waste and utilize the process of, really harness organization in terms of assembly, which means I can usually reduce the cost. The other concept that you need to understand is economies of scale. So economies of scale really involves the specialization in one product. So basically, you're at an advantage in terms of cost when you just make one thing and you make it en masse. So, when you look at the individual price per unit, that fixed cost point per unit, when you produce that item on massive scales, you can essentially get yourself an economy of scale because you can decrease, you can have a lower fixed cost for that one small item. So easiest way, best example really in this COVID-19 life is if all you produced was hand sanitizer, you could actually have a massive economy of scale because you are outputting millions and millions of, hand sanitizers. The cost price of that hand sanitizer that it costs you as a business to make, not what you're selling it for, what it costs you as a business to make, is dramatically decreased if that is all that you are making. Because you can, for example, bulk buy materials or situate yourself exactly where the distilleries are or whatever it takes to make that hand sanitizer. You will only have the one type of machine. So all of those costs in terms of the assembly line or the setting up of your business, if you're just making the one thing, can be dramatically reduced, which means that the cost it makes per item means that you can reduce that and therefore produce at a way less, at a reduced cost per item. So that's what we mean when we're talking about economies of scale. Other ways that you can ensure efficiency or, reduce that ratio of production versus what it costs you to are ensuring that your workers are properly trained so that they actually know what they're doing. So you have, less incidents or less waste or more precise quality in product. But it also involves multi-skilling workers. So one worker could do more than one task, which means you only have to employ one or pay one salary, or you have one salary on your cost, but you're still producing the same amount. And last but not least, manufacturing offshore tends to reduce costs because, in terms of Australia particularly, manufacturing within Australia is very expensive, whereas if you go to other parts of the world, or so you offset your costs. So, if you're IKEA, you make your furniture in Poland or, India or Southeast Asia somewhere. Manufacturing offshore or doing the manufacturing process offshore can dramatically reduce those costs while still producing the same amount. So that's some ways in which you can produce efficiency. A reminder that efficiency is the comparison of what you're producing versus how much it costs to produce. In terms of other key concepts, restructuring is one. So from time to time, a business may want to, restructure. That could be for a variety of reasons. The business might be growing and the structure that they had previously doesn't fit. But also that could be because of, a costing issue. So commonly businesses, very large businesses, so like huge companies, restructure when the market isn't necessarily in their favor and they have to save some money. But by the same account, if I look at a company, a small startup company might have had a structure at one point in time, which they've now outgrown. So they need to restructure. Restructuring essentially involves changing the way the business is run to be more efficient and streamlined. So that could involve changing middle management, but that often involves amalgamating. So where you might have had 7 middle managers, you might then change what they're responsible for and change that down to 3 middle managers. Or support workers, you might merge some of the responsibilities of support workers. Or it could involve creating an entirely new position. So in multimedia, a lot of the time in small multimedia startups, particularly with cloud-based services, that might involve a restructuring to have a middle manager, involve middle management in terms of cybersecurity. So a way businesses can restructure includes upgrading technology, also outsourcing a variety of processes. It can involve, taking an existing role and actually subcontracting that work out instead. Whereby which you are usually obliged to retain or move workers into other areas. It could also involve, retrenching redundant staff, and that's a fancy way of saying actually, making a person redundant. So say you decided to subcontract out a certain part of your business. Say you're a multimedia business and you didn't want to employ someone constantly for web design, and you instead were going to save yourself from paying that person's salary by outsourcing, so subcontracting that work out. If you had a permanent person on salary and you wish to no longer have them in that role, they would be retrenched or made redundant, whereby which you usually have to pay them out a significant portion of their salary as per whatever workplace agreement you have. However, restructuring can also involve amalgamating with other companies or other businesses. Now, this is very common within small businesses where, like, say, for example, startups, whereby which, there's two startups and, they amalgamate together to form a different company. So, in that, that is definitely a restructuring, and it usually involves a reimagining or reorganization of roles. Restructuring, however, can also involve moving production offshore. So, a timber industry which, had previously manufactured and made products in Australia can move that production offshore, and those people who were involved with the production previously that was local would usually get made redundant, or some of them might be retrained to other areas. Like I said before, a common way of restructuring is reducing the higher and middle management. So previously, where you had 7 middle managers, their roles might be amalgamated or joined together, and there might only be 4, for example. So that's a really common way to restructure, and it's usually a pretty quick way if you're looking to restructure for the purpose of saving money or reducing cost. Finally, quality control. Quality control involves the checking of resources and products at all stages of the production process. Businesses' reputation depends on the quality of its product. So most businesses have a quality control mission statement or like a manifest to say, this is what kind of quality you should expect in our product, and these are the standards that we hold ourselves to. Now, in all stages of production, quality control is very strictly managed, and products that don't meet acceptable standards are usually rejected. Structures that are put in place to, assure quality control at different stages of the production process can, be very sophisticated, moving a particular product through, a machine which actually checks within a millimeter if the product is of the appropriate quality, size and shape as specified, or it can involve something as simple as a visual inspection. So, we've all seen documentaries of food companies, particularly where there is a human being on the assembly line visually checking a product and removing any that don't meet the quality control standards. So if you want consumers to, actually purchase your product, quality in your product is the real hinge or clincher which will ensure that consumers buy and rebuy. Going, it's good enough really isn't the case. And many businesses, the success of the business is entirely hinged on developing and maintaining consistency and reliability in their products. Most businesses spend hundreds and thousands, and some even big companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars each year on ensuring quality control and ensuring processes are implemented and carried out at each stage of the production process. And that's it, guys. That is your last video tutorial on structural factors.